Greetings, fellow RotoBallers. It is week 5, which means it is back to the Checkdown. My name is Joey Christopoulos with my tutty guy, Dave. This is the show that gives you all of our favorite QB starts and sits for week 5, tight end starts and sits. For those of you that have been watching the last 4 weeks, thanks for coming back. For those of you who are here for the first time, we're here to help. Dave, we did pretty good last week.
Yeah, I'd say it was like a straight 50-50 for us, Joe. It was a mixed bag. We had really strong starts. Our Jalen Hurts was the start of the week. He absolutely balled out. Stafford bailed us out with some good old garbage yards and garbage tutties. Thank you for that, Stafford. Baker, I think he's confused. We've used him so much on this show that I think when we said like first he was a start, he thought he was a sit, and then we're like be a sit, and then he was a start, and now he's a sit. So Baker, goodbye from the check down for just a few weeks. And of course, tight ends is an absolute field of landmines, but we stepped on a few of the right ones in Dawson Knox, and maybe he makes an appearance on today's show again.
Yeah, the tight end position right now is Squid Game. Basically,
That's the perfect way of putting it.
Who will survive by the end of the season? But Dave, it's time for us to hop into our week 5 picks because everyone watching right now wants to win their fantasy league this week. Also, remember, as you're watching this video, comment and question below. We had over 50 comments last week. Hopefully, we helped you out. Some people we weren't able to help out, but we do the best we can every single week to help you win your fantasy league. So let's start, Dave. My first QB start of the week. He is back on the check down. It is Kirk Cousins against the Detroit Lions. Look, last week we said step back. This week we say giant leap forward for fantasy kind. I just like Minnesota's offense a whole lot. And if you're looking at this matchup, the Detroit Lions, they've allowed 7 passing touchdowns this season already. They've allowed 250 plus passing yards to 3 of their first 4 passers, and that was not named Justin Fields yesterday, who still gashed them all over their field. Their secondary is a mess. They had more injuries on defense. Detroit, they try hard, but it doesn't work out. This is a great slate for Kirk Cousins. Start him up in week 5.
I love the call, Joey. I mean, this is a guy who, despite not the biggest week last week fantasy-wise, still throwing the ball 38 times a game. Sign me up this week as well. I'm going to go ahead and give you my start of the week at quarterback. This is a guy who maybe has been on your bench for a while, and I'm telling you, this is the most consistent quarterback in fantasy right now. Why? He has done something that not Brady, Kyler, Dak, Lamar can say, which is he has thrown at least 2 tutties in every game in 2021. Of course, I'm talking about Joe Burrow.
Of course.
Joe Burrow, baby. Look, he's been as consistent as they come, and now he gets Green Bay, who, before they got their hands on Ben, I move like I'm buffering Roethlisberger, they were giving up the 4th most points to opposing quarterbacks. It's probably even more than that. I haven't checked yet, but I love Joe Burrow taking on Green Bay. I smell shootout. I smell fantasy points. Joey, who is your last start at quarterback for this week?
I'm going to go deep cut on this one, Dave. This is probably a guy that not a lot of people think about, not a lot of people talk about, and certainly the national media is not spending enough time on. It's Tom Brady this week, ladies and gentlemen, versus the Miami Dolphins.
When you said deep cut, you meant cut so deep, because I started him last week, and that's exactly what he did to me.
Didn't work out in the rain against New England. Maybe some people could see that coming. I just see a bounce back coming this week. The Dolphins, they've allowed multiple touchdowns to their last 3 quarterbacks over the last 3 weeks. In 35 career games, Tom Brady in New England has had problems in Miami before, but I think this is just a different story. 35 career games, he's averaging 2 touchdowns against them. I see a bounce back. I see a revenge game. I think anyone who might be thinking, Tom Brady's numbers are starting to come down a little bit, no, I think they're going to shoot right back through the roof. I think he's another start this week as well.
Let's go ahead and get right to our sits. People need to know who they need to take out of their lineup this week, Joe. And this is a guy who a lot of people was probably blowing up their benches with 4 tutties last week. This week, I'm saying as he goes over the pond, he's going to be ice cold, drinking ice cold tea, American style. Matty Ice versus the Jets. This is more about the setting, Joe, and then a little hint of the O-line as well. This is a London game. If you watch these games in years past, whether it's Mexico City or London, for some reason, when these guys have to travel, the jet lag is real. It's a thing. They look tired. It's usually low-scoring games. And to boot, he's taking on the Jets, who are no joke. Second fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks right now. Only gave up 1 tutty very late to Tannehill. And if you're talking about O-lines and struggling quarterbacks and quarterbacks that are taking a lot of sacks, Tannehill's up there, and maybe right beyond that is Matty Ice, absolutely struggling with their O-line. He's a sit for me this week.
Yeah, I don't know what to expect with Matt Ryan, and great advice, Dave, because now I don't have to get up early and watch this London game at 6 o'clock in the morning Pacific time. I can snooze, I can enjoy myself, wake up, and just go, oh, well, let's see what happens. Yeah, I think we're fading all Falcons players this week. You know, those games are just kind of a tough way to gauge whether you can get fancy success out of them.
Except I just want to go on record and say we will never be fading Cordarrelle Patterson, Joey, because at your own risk, my friend.
He's on fire!
Risk.
Dude, he's like that montage in Scarface when everything's working out and he's buying a tiger right now. That is basically Cordarrelle Patterson in fantasy. You cannot be stopped.
Good for him.
Good for him. My next sit, I don't like Jalen Hurts against the Panthers this week, but my big sit this week is Taylor Heineke against the New Orleans Saints. Now, a couple of people in the comments asked whether we should start Bridgewater or Heineke. I said Bridgewater. I was wrong. I was wrong on that one. Well, this week I'm here to
can't predict injuries, my man.
Hey, I just don't know Washington football quarterbacks. That's my weakness, Dave. My only weakness. But this week, after a huge performance by Washington's offense, they're going to play a Saints team that I just think has got a pretty decent they got a pretty decent defense. They've held their quarterbacks in check so far. They still have 7 interceptions on the season. I can just see a comeback to earth moment here. So whether you're in tournament play or whether all of a sudden you think Heineke's the answer moving forward, temper your expectations. He's my sit in week 5. Dave, it is time to move on to our tight end start sits of this week. Let's start on the good side. Let's start with our starts. Who do you got?
This is a guy who, look, in fantasy football, you have to be adaptable, Joe. A couple weeks ago, I was telling people, yeah, he's probably droppable because with Tua at quarterback, Mike Gesicki was an afterthought. He was getting out-targeted by tight ends we've never heard of. Enter Jacoby Brissett, and all of a sudden, Mike Gesicki is back to relevance. This is a guy we loved his talent, his athleticism. He really does kind of fit that Hawkinson mold of tight end, that pass-catching tight end. He just put up 5 for 57 and a tutty. He now gets Tampa Bay, who we just saw give up 2 tutties to Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry. So obviously there's a weakness there at tight end in the red zone. He's gotten at least 6 targets a game. I really like him with Jacoby Brissett.
It's a great call because of that target share, right? And again, with tight ends and starts, we're just looking for a floor that you can work with, and hopefully you can kind of build off that floor from there, which is why we're sticking with Dawson Knox for week 2 in a row, baby. We called it last week. And last week in week 4, he put up 2 touchdowns. He's got 3 in his last 2 weeks. Now he's going to face a Kansas City defense, which has not been very good this season on Sunday Night Football. And they've also allowed 3 tight ends already to post 50-plus yards against them. Now, look, that's not a lot, but that's a solid place to start. Dawson Knox is hot right now. Good matchup. Put them together. Start them up, baby. Start them up. Which means we got to
Joey. You smell that?
I think it's time for us to talk about our tight end sits. Oh, man. Make the call. Make the call, Dave. So let's dive right into our tight end sits first. Who do you got first on our tight end sits?
I might as well stick with the team. Might as well stick with the game. Keep sleeping, everybody. No need to watch the Falcons play the Jets in London. Kyle Pitts. I think this might end up being one of our better preseason calls, Joe. We said Pitts was going to be a bust where he was going in the 4th and 5th round. Jets are giving up the 7th fewest fantasy points to tight ends. And I know people in the comments are like, well, they use him as a wide receiver. Well, guess what? The Jets give up the 4th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. So whether he's being used as a tight end or wide receiver, the Jets know how to stop it. Throw in the jet lag and the fact that he still hasn't had that big game we're all waiting for. Maybe we will keep waiting.
Yeah, I'm with you. Look, he's been a solid tight end, but he is not worth that draft value, Dave. We've been hitting it right on the head, and until he shows otherwise and at least starts finding the end zone, I definitely think he's a sit, especially in London, as we're fading most all Falcons players, probably except for maybe Calvin Ridley, just because you got to do it that week. My final sit, Robert Tonyan versus the Bengals.
Big Bob.
I don't even need to know the matchup to know that the touchdown regression definition of that, it's got Robert Tonyan's face on it right now after leading all tight ends with touchdowns last year. Look, in week 2, he had 54 yards and a touchdown, right? That's pretty much standard Robert Tonyan production. The other 3 games that he's played combined, 5 catches, 22 yards. Again, Dave, combination of those 3 games. look, every single week in the red zone, it seems to be kind of a revolving door with Aaron Rodgers. You know, two weeks ago it was Valdez Scantling. Last week it was Randall Cobb. A couple weeks before that it was Aaron Jones. Right now it's not kind of Robert Tonyan. Could it happen in the coming weeks? Sure, but this is something that you're really gambling on. It's a risky play for me, and I think it's time for fantasy, teams to start kind of contemplating whether Tonyan either needs to be benched or maybe moved off of rosters. I'm not saying move off of rosters yet, but I am saying bench for this week.
Yeah, we know Aaron Rodgers. We know he loves to spread it, and I would bet good money, check down money, that Devontae Adams finds paint this coming weekend. I feel like he's going to be force feeding him. He's yet to do it. It's going to happen. So therefore, there's a lot of other Packers pass catchers that are going to be missing out. Tanyan's name is all over that. And Joe, that's going to do it.
Yeah, man, we're week 5 already. It's rocking and rolling along. This is the check down here. We're having such a great time doing this video, you guys, because of all the questions and comments that we get below. So keep up the good work. Keep pumping those out there. We're going to try and help you guys as best as we possibly can. You can follow Dave at Tutty Guy, as you're probably seeing below his screen. You can follow me on socials at Joey Sports Guy. This was tight ends, start and sits, and QB starts and sits from the check down. Thanks for checking it out. Go win that league, and we'll see you next time.
We'll see you then.